In this week's Justice Gap, we actually want to revisit a case we examined in one of our very first Justice Gap segments, the story of Preston Nunn Jr. The 25-year-old recently sued the Aurora Police Department and won for what happened to him during a May 2021 traffic stop.
Yeah, I'm getting out. Sit down! Get down! Get down on the ground now! I'm gonna tase him. I got my license and registration.
Less than a minute into the traffic stop, APD officer Gabriel Nestor is seen drawing his gun and aiming it at Nunn's head as he reached for his driver's license. Aurora Police say Preston's car came into an officer's lane while they were conducting another traffic stop. This was on East Iliff Avenue that evening. Nunn is tackled, at least tased twice and choked while he's already on the ground. He suffered a concussion and a broken tooth in all of this. Earlier this month, this was just a couple of weeks ago, a 6-panel jury found Officer Nestor liable for excessive force and awarding Preston a total of $400,000 in damages. And to discuss the settlement and the complexities of civilly suing a police department, we want to bring in our legal expert, Whitney Traylor, because Whitney, suing a police department, it's not really like straightforward. It's not cut and dry. Police officers are protected by specific laws, so it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, right?
That's exactly right. It's actually very challenging, and a lot of people will sue under a federal statute, 42 U.S.C. 1983, and that makes it complicated. There's nuance to it, and so a lot of those cases didn't go forward. But in Colorado, we passed in 2020 the police accountability bill, and so now I'm starting to see more and more lawsuits just asserting that state claim, and that state claim actually makes it much easier to go forward against these individual officers because it takes away the qualified immunity, it takes away the certain standard, and it just says, was this an objectively reasonable response? And you determine that based on the person's conduct, the seriousness of the crime, the imminent threat. And in this case, this was so hard to watch. I watched this video again, and it just escalated immediately. And what really struck me was that he complied with the officers. He said, pull out your license and registration. And when he went to his pocket, the officer immediately reacted. And it was, this was a really bad case of excessive force. And I think the jury verdict was correct. And it was a good thing that they had the body cam. The video spoke volumes.
The evidence that you need, right?
Yes.
So in this case, Nunn, I think he was asking for about $10 million. The jury gave him $400,000, $200,000 of that punitive money.
Yes.
But even getting that sort of judgment, is that rare?
Yeah, it's difficult to sue the police and to win. And now you're seeing, I think, more and more is these larger settlements. But here, you don't see a lot of these cases going to trial. And you mentioned it was $200,000 for his compensatory damages, which means to make him whole, the pain and suffering, and then the $200,000, which was the punitive. Now, under this police accountability law, it says that if so in this case, if Aurora Police felt that he acted without cause, then he could be on the hook for $25,000 or 5% of the judgment, whichever's less. So in this case, $20,000 would be less. So if Aurora determines, hey, you acted out of line, he'll be on the hook for that 20 grand, and the rest the department will, the employer, which is the Aurora Police Department, will pay.
Well, my last question for you, when you talk about the money, $400,000, I mean, that's a decent settlement. Is that just taxpayer money? Is it that cut and dry? We're paying for this?
Right, essentially. So if there's a set aside in the budget, then yes, that comes out of taxpayer money unless they're self-funded. And as I understand it, Aurora is not, they don't have insurance, they're not self-insured. So yes, that comes out of their budget. I think their budget was $165 million. And when you look at Aurora, who's under a consent decree because they were found to have patterns and practice of racial discrimination and a number of other things, they're under a consent decree. So, and they have been, since Elijah McClain, they have been hit with case after case after case where they ultimately settled. So I think Aurora still has some work to do, and that's the purpose of the consent decree, to try and make sure they are improving. And I think there was a report recently that showed they're improving in some areas, but they still have a long way to go, and this is Exhibit A.
Yep, long way to go, and I think, these cases against a lot of folks in Aurora, mainly black and brown, specifically, young black people, but if this is taxpayer money, this is affecting all of Aurora, and maybe
Yes.
all of Aurora should pay
Yes.
attention, right? Not just those being affected.
Absolutely right, and there should be some more scrutiny
Right.
to, with respect to the level of hiring, to the level of training, and honestly, I mean, there was no imminent threat. So, yeah, this is, yep.
Whitney Traylor, thank you,
Sure.
as always.
All right.